After a couple week break, we are in the end of Genesis chapter 30. The end of Genesis chapter 30. So, what's happened here? Genesis chapter 30 talks about those of Jacob's sons that were born. He has every son but Benjamin in this chapter. So, we have the four sons from Leah, which would be Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. We have the four sons from concubines, Dan, Asher, Gad, and Naphtali. We have Leah's fifth son, Issachar, her sixth son, Zebulun, and Rachel's first son, Joseph. They are all born. We see that God has looked upon both of them. He opened Rachel's womb, and he gave Leah many children, seeing that she was unloved. We then have Laban. When Jacob tells him he wants to leave, Laban says, "Stay with me more. What shall your wages be? Because I've basically heard I'm only blessed because of you." And so Jacob presents this deal, and that's where we left off with. In verse 29 through 30 would be the last part of the review. This is Jacob speaking to Laban. "Thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was a little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed me since my coming, and now when shall I provide for my own house also?" Jacob's asking what he's going to ask for the benefit of providing for his own family. He said, basically, I've been providing for your family for 14 years. How should I provide for my own family also? Any questions, any comments before we start the last part of Genesis chapter 30? Yes.
It is interesting. On one side, it's almost like he's bragging, verse 30, that you've been blessed because I'm here. But I don't think that's his, it could be, but it seems more the conscious reality that God is using me here for your benefit. And it should be in a humble way. That every Christian should say that wherever they're working, whether it's at General Electric or at a church or somewhere else, that I know God's blessed this company because of my presence in some way.
Absolutely. Pastor mentioned having the attitude in any situation of life that the Lord is blessing here because of my presence. And also, he mentions that Jacob just seems to be saying what's true in verse 30. And I would very much say, ever since Jacob's deceptions with his family, pretty much the rest you see of him in the Bible. He speaks what is true, he speaks directly, and he is explaining things that happen as he sees them. So that's what he's doing here. He's telling Laban directly, I'm going to ask this because I want to provide for my own family. And so verse 31, Laban answers. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 31 to 36? Go ahead, Steve.
And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again and feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, all the brown cattle among the sheep, spotted and speckled among the goats, of such shall be my hire. So shall my righteousness answer for me time to come, and it shall come for my hire for thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, brown among the sheep, that shall be counted sold with me. Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. And he removed the he-goats that were ring straight and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and everyone that had some white in it, all the brown amongst the sheep, he gave them into the hand of his son. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob. Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flock.
Thank you. So, Laban is very agreeable to these terms of Jacob providing for his own family. So he asks Jacob basically, what shall I give thee? What were you thinking? And Jacob says, I won't serve you for wages from you directly. If you'll let me do this thing, I'll continue to take care of your flock. And so in verse 32, he says, I'll pass through all your flock today, removing all the speckled and spotted cattle, all the brown cattle among the sheep. I was trying to think how many brown sheep are there? Not many. And the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. This is the verse I left off 3 weeks ago. It's basically talking about, I'll remove all the mixed breeds, all the sheep that there's something with their lineage. They don't have a consistent coat. All the goats the same way, and all the cattle. So he's separating basically all the mixed breeds of each of those. And he says, of such shall be my hire. Like, these will be my wages. I'll just take all of these cattle right now. And then verse 33, so shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come. We see, and I realized when Jacob mentioned that, despite how Laban has treated him deceitfully, Jacob hasn't retaliated in any way towards Laban. This is a situation where he's very much been acting righteously. And he says, I'm going to prove my honesty here when it shall come from my hire before thy face, when you look and see what I've taken. If there's anyone that's not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. So you can look at my flocks anytime. And if there's any sheep or goats that aren't as I just agreed with you, that will be counted stolen. And Laban, he's very agreeable to this. He's getting a very good deal here. At least he believes that. And so he says, behold, I would that it might be according to thy word. Like, look, I'll give you exactly what you said. And so verse 35, he removed that day. I don't know whether, actually we do know. The he is clearly Jacob because it says gave them into the hand of his sons. Jacob removed the he-goats that were green-streaked and spotted. So those are mixed goats. And the she-goats that were speckled and spotted. Also, everyone that had some white in it. I'm assuming these goats were either naturally gray or naturally brown. And all the brown among the sheep. Obviously, sheep are normally white. And if you see a brown or a black sheep, that's a great rarity. And gave them into the hand of his sons. So Jacob's going to take care of Laban's flock. Jacob's sons are going to take care of Jacob's flock, which tells us also that some time has passed, at least from the older sons being born in the previous chapter, because Jacob has the sons that are old enough that he can trust them to take care of his flock as a shepherd. Yes.
Just a thought from verse 36. Wouldn't 35 possibly be Laban? Laban removed that day. In other words, he was Jacob made the proposal. Laban got involved, and then Laban gave it to his sons, and he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob. So himself would be Laban.
So
I don't know. I always thought that was Laban because of 36. I may be wrong.
The way I've always read it and realized growing up, I especially read the New King James as a translation, is that verse 36 is referring to 3 days' journey between Jacob's sons, his own flock, and Jacob himself. And Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. In which case, the himself is not the word we would choose here in a translation, but I've always considered the passage that Jacob gives the flock that he's taking into the hand of Jacob's sons, and sets 3 days' journey between them, his flock, and Laban's flock. So there's going to be no argument about the flocks mixing. Because, generally, that's what would happen if you start seeing all these spotted and so on and so forth, lambs and sheep among the purely white herd. You're like, oh, you're getting yours over into here, and they're having children. And so 3 days' journey, that's like 50, 60, 70 miles between Jacob's flocks, all of the off-color ones, and Laban's, which are now all white, solid color, whatever color the goats are supposed to be. And now Jacob's going to take care of Laban's flock, and Jacob's sons take care of his flock. So that is the way I've always read it. Now I have in my notes to look that up. because in studying that, I didn't even notice the word himself there each time looking through it. So Jacob's going to take care of Laban's flocks, as verse 36 makes very clear, and it seems to be that Jacob's sons take care of his own flock. Yes, Steve?
Well, 35, I hardly see that word ring streak, whatever that is.
That is probably true. It might be one of the only times it occurs in the Bible. Definitely the meaning is clear, although actually I have seen goats that have a ring streak around the neck where it's a much lighter color and there's basically a ring. It looks like a collar, but it's the coloring of the goat.
So that ring streak is like ring.
It
goes all the way around.
it's ring streaked, it's just spelled in Old English. It's that exact word. Kind of like the word draft being spelled D-R-A-U-G-H-T. The spelling would be extremely clear to them here. It's ring streaked. So then we have verses 37 to 43 afterward, but are there any comments in verse 31 to 36? Are there any comments in verse 31 to 36?
I guess the summary of that would be they decided and then they separated. They made a decision about who got what, and then they made it very clear. You guys are way over here and we're way over here.
Absolutely. So now we get verses 37 to 43. Do I have a volunteer? Go ahead, Pastor.
And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of hazel and chestnut trees and filled white strakes in them and made the white appear which was in the rod. And he set the rods which he had filled before the flocks in the gutters in the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods and brought forth ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-straight, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves and put them not unto Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. And when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in, so the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maid servants, and
Mic back on? I'm going to say, oh, it's definitely back on. So, Laban thought he was getting a deal for a very small portion of his cattle that would normally bear off collar. Jacob comes up with this idea, and it seems to be he's putting stripes in the rod, almost indicating to God which cattle he wants from Laban's flock, because he has all of these branches that he's cutting off. He's stripping stripes in their bark He's putting them in the watering troughs. When Laban's stronger flock comes, they're giving birth to all of the off-collar, ring-streak, spotted, and so on and so forth, sheep, goats, and cattle, and Jacob's taking them. And when the weaker flocks come to conceive, he takes all the rods out, and they're conceiving all the normal on-collar livestock. And this is continued for, we know when Jacob and Laban confront each other later, this continues for 6 years. How many times do sheep and cattle and such give birth in a year? Somewhere between 1 and 2. So 6 years of that, we're talking about 10 or so generations of cattle, sheep, and goats. And in those generations, now Laban has a feeble flock. It's much smaller and weaker. And Jacob has the strong flock. And this whole time, he's basically been siphoning off all of them that bore off collar, which both Laban and Jacob said, oh, God gave you all of this because there's no human explanation for it. But whenever they happened, he siphoned them off to his own flock. So his own flock's getting bigger and bigger. Laban's flock is getting smaller and smaller. And Jacob says in verse 43, increased exceedingly in much cattle and maidservants and menservants, camels and asses. How many camels you could buy back then? That was the source of your wealth. You needed camels for carrying things, long journeys, helping people out, travel in general. So camels are very valuable. Donkeys, not so much, but donkey is very much a work animal. If you need, say, for instance, an animal to tread the grain, you can use a cow, you can use a steer for it, but they're more expensive, they'll eat more. You can use a donkey because they're also very strong. So he has a lot of donkeys and many people serving him. We find out once again when Jacob and Laban talk in the next chapter that Jacob came here alone. He didn't take his family's servants or such with him. So Jacob came here alone. Now it's similar to Abraham. He has an entourage with him because the Lord is blessing him. And Jacob says in the next chapter, basically, he's given me the wages for the 20 years in 6 is basically what's being implied here. But because of that, God is blessing him. He becomes very wealthy. And Laban realizes at the start of the next chapter that Laban's becoming less wealthy. So, takeaways. Jacob is putting the rods with bark peeled off into the watering troughs, and that's not what's causing the cattle to bear speckled, ring-streaked, and spotted. It's the Lord causing that. And because of this, Jacob is gaining basically the cattle of his choice from Laban's flock. And fast forward 6 years, Jacob is very wealthy, and Laban is less wealthy. Any questions here?
So what you were saying was that those trees, there's no, once you peel off the bark,
Yeah.
there's no chemical in them that make,
Yes, it's not mutating fur color genes in the animals.
would it induce, is there something in there that would induce labor?
I would not necessarily say induce labor. I would definitely say the water probably has a sweeter flavor. The cattle are probably minded to stay there longer, and because of that, probably more cattle are breeding in close proximity so Jacob can see all of it. But I would not say I was trying to think, okay, what chemicals are even in tree bark? I would not say. There is a possibility there. I don't know that it wouldn't. My mind tells me it doesn't.
What is interesting though, I mean, if the cattle were pregnant, unless that helped the pregnancy part of the cattle, that putting, in other words, it's not the birth of the cattle, but the pregnancy of the
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, never mind. There was something in my mind.
It's one of the good points, one of the good arguments that it is very much Lord doing this, which both Jacob and Laban will credit. is if you put the rods here by the time the cattle are giving birth, well, sheep, say, give birth to 4 sheep at a time. They've already been in the sheep's womb for a while. It's not like the sheep are changing color in the womb when the cattle are drinking out of the trough. It doesn't work that way. But the Lord is very much giving on Jacob great blessing here, which the Lord had promised back when Jacob left and the Lord had spoke to him. Now he's fulfilling that promise. Any further questions? So that brings us to chapter 31. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 1 through 3? Chapter 31, go ahead, Yuri. So we have 3 verses here. Jacob either overhears Laban's sons, or Laban's sons are so angry with Jacob they're willing to say this to his face. Although we see it's in the third person. They weren't talking directly to Jacob, but either they were deliberately speaking in his hearing or he just happened to overhear them. But notice Laban, in the next chapter, he's going to credit the Lord. In this last chapter, he credited the Lord for blessing him. Laban's sons don't see it that way. Laban's sons seem to really know nothing about the Lord or care nothing about the Lord. And they credit this directly to Jacob. Like, look, Jacob's stealing our father's flock. And from all that was our father's, from all the stuff he used to have that Jacob has now, Jacob's got all this glory. He's great because he took and stole the stuff from Laban. And we see in the next chapter, or now in this chapter, when Laban rebukes Jacob, Laban does not believe this is true. Laban's sons believe this is true. They believe that Jacob's stealing their wealth. Laban doesn't. And they're obviously very, very unhappy with Jacob. We see the next verse. And Jacob's checking to see, okay, wait, who's this affecting? And he realizes that Laban's countenance is not favoring him anymore. Laban's not happy to see Jacob anymore. So he realizes that's what it means when the Bible says the countenance of Laban was not toward him as before. Laban's countenance towards Jacob is not the way now that it was toward him before. In other words, like Laban has basically said, don't leave 6 years ago. I'll pay you whatever you want. And then agreed to the payment. And now 6 years later, Jacob gets the impression that Laban would definitely not be unhappy if he left. So he sees in verse 2 that Laban's no longer favoring him. In verse 3, now the Lord gives direct direction. When Jacob left, the Lord had told Jacob specifically, I will be with thee and bless thee until I bring you back to this land. And now we see in verse 3, the Lord said unto Jacob, return to the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. He's promising now, when you go back, I'll be with you. The Lord carrying out the last part of what he promises Jacob left, is now he's directing him to go back. So, right when Jacob realizes there's going to be all sorts of difficulties if he keeps staying here, the Lord gives him precise direction, saying it's time to leave, go back to your family. The Lord promises his presence again. He's been present this whole time. He promises it again on the way back. Why? Because Jacob almost certainly, from what's going to happen in the next few chapters, is scared of Esau. Jacob's scared of Esau. That may be the reason why he delayed for 20 years in coming back anyway. But here the Lord says, I'll be with you. I'll take care of this. And we see in the Bible, God, just as in every promise, is absolutely faithful to fulfill this promise. So, any questions or comments on the first 3 verses? Laban's sons are not crediting the Lord. They just see Jacob as being a thief, stealing all his wealth. Laban doesn't see it this way, but Laban's not happy with Jacob. And this goes back to the words that Jacob said to Laban in the end of this last chapter, so shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come. Jacob has set it up in such a way that it's very clear to Laban. Jacob wasn't being dishonest. It was the Lord that gave Jacob my livestock. With that, do I have a volunteer, verses 4 through 9? Volunteer to read verses 4 through 9. Go ahead, Matilda.
So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flocks, and he said to them, I see fire from things that is not known toward me at all, but God is my father, has been with me. And you know that with all my might I have served the Father. Yet the Father had decided me and sent me and changed my ways 10 times, but God did not allow him to do it. He said thus, let a child in your way, when all the flocks more expected, and if he said thus, the stranger shall be with them, and all flocks more expected. So God has taken away the livestock of the father and given them to me.
Thank you. So we have here, Jacob now, after debating what to do when he saw Laban wasn't favorable, God gives him very clear direction. Now he's going to talk to both wives at the same time, which shows despite their conflicts over childbearing, and at a lot of other times they actually get along with each other. But he calls both of his wives at the same time. He's going to explain this to them. And so that's exactly what he does here. He doesn't make a decision and just say, we're leaving. He's going to explain the situation, and they're going to counsel him. So, verse 5, first point, I see your father's countenance. It's not toward me as before. That is, your father is not happy with me anymore. But the God of my father hath been with me. Second promise, the God that I worship, which we know Rachel and Leah know about. And it seems that Leah is more faithful to the Lord than Rachel in terms of actions. But he says, so God's been with me. Verse 6. Now, what's the problem? Why does your father not like me? You know that with all my power I've served your father. In other words, I've done exactly what I should do. I've taken care of his flocks to the best of my ability. Verse 7. And here's what your father has done. He has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. Saying, look, Laban, presumably that means he started to see himself losing sheep, cattle, and goats. So he started changing Jacob's wages like, oh, apparently all of my cattle really like to bear spotted cattle. Okay, let's say we can have Jacob take the streaked cattle now. And then when all the cattle start bearing streaked, okay, let's go to the spotted again. Back and forth and back and forth. It says, change my wages 10 times. Whatever Laban tried, we have verse 8. If Laban said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bore speckled. So God is very much working here. And if he said thus, the ring-streaked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-streaked. Whatever Laban said when he was trying to limit the loss to his flock, okay, Jacob, you can take these. All the cattle started bearing that. God was working here onto. God allowed Laban to deceive Jacob earlier, and that caused Jacob to remain here a lot longer than he wished. But God also gave Jacob great blessing for staying here. And verse 9, this is Jacob summing up the whole situation. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. Like, no matter what Laban said, Jacob should take his wages. All the cattle started bearing that way. God was working here to give Jacob Laban's livestock. Any questions or comments there?
Yeah, this is really, to me, really good on for Jacob, that he doesn't seem to fight his father-in-law. He doesn't seem to grumble about it. He just saw God taking care of it. I'm with you. So to me, that's really interesting that whatever someone ever tried to do, it didn't work, because
Yeah.
God was going to take care of God said, I'll take care of you. You know, I'm with you. And so it seems though this was like you said, there seems to be a shifting in Jacob's part in life, even to this point. He's really beginning to trust instead of manipulating the situation.
Absolutely. So we then have his vision, Jacob's vision in verses 10 through 13. Do I have a volunteer to read Jacob's vision? Okay, I will read this. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of the Lord and the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes and see. All the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointedst the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. So now Jacob is explaining to his wives exactly how God told him to go back to Israel. And so he sees the cattle are breeding, and it's all ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. It's all the cattle that God has given Jacob. He sees this in a dream. The angel of God speaks to him. Jacob answers. Remember, he's seen the angel once before, and that was when he left. So this is the second time Jacob has seen the angel of God. Almost certainly a Christophany here. But we have verse 12. And he, the angel, said, Lift up now thine eyes and see. And basically see, look, all the sheep are ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. And then we have, why did all this happen? For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. God had seen the deceit of Laban, which was more than just with Laban's daughters. It was with Jacob's wages as well. And God judged in this case and basically gave Laban's livestock to Jacob. And then he says, I am the God of Bethel. Bethel means the house of God. It's what Jacob named the place where God spoke to him the first time. Where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. The vow that Jacob vowed a couple chapters ago, I have the exact reference here, Genesis 28, verses 21 and 22. Jacob says to God, if you will indeed bring me back safely, then of all that I have, I will give a tenth unto thee, and this pillar that I have anointed shall be a house for you. And Jacob was speaking out of his ignorance about trying to make the pillar a house for God, because obviously God didn't even need the temple as a house. Certainly doesn't need a random pillar here that the Lord didn't choose. But it's Jacob saying he'll be faithful to God if God brings him back safely. The angel of God reminds him of this vow and says, okay, it's time for you to go back. Get thee back to the land of thy kindred. And God is fulfilling the promise that he made 2 chapters ago. Any questions or comments here?
What is gristle?
A grizzly bear, grizzled. It's like grizzled, like grizzly. A grizzly bear has silver in the coat as well as the brown. They're brown with an undercurrent of silvered. Here, it's just under hair that are a different color from the main hair of the animal in this case. A person has a grizzled beard when it's maybe the main color, black or brown or whatever, and then underneath it is gray or white. So we have any other questions or comments?
So it's sort of like if it's got streaks in it, if it's got spots on it, or if it's got toned hair.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely right. Grizzled has the idea of two-toned hair.
Those grizzly bears are pretty mean because they showed it on TV where one was chasing a woman and her dog. He got in the tent.
Yeah.
And finally took off.
There are only 2 states in the world where you can ever see grizzly bears, though, so most people are safe. With that, we have any other questions? Brings us to verses 14 through 16. Go ahead, Obi.
And we not counted them strangers. sold us, and that the wife devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do.
So now we see Rachel and Leah's counsel, and by this we do see the sadness of their relationship with their father. So in verse 14, they ask Jacob a rhetorical question. Is there yet any portion that's Laban providing for them because they're still living? Or inheritance that's after Laban's death, anything that they would gain for us in our father's house? And by doing this, they're saying, look, Laban's not providing for us anymore, and he didn't leave unto us any inheritance. Implication being it's all going to Laban's sons. Like, there is no benefit for us materially. And then verse 15, are we not counted of him strangers? He's treated us like foreigners, like we're not even of his family. And then this is how they saw the arranged marriages that Laban gave to Jacob. For he has sold us and have quite devoured also our money. Like they're saying, when Laban basically sold both of us to you for 7 years of labor, not that we're not happy to be married, but that he was treating us like slaves. He was selling us and then devoured our money. All those years, all the wealth he would have gained, so on and so forth, devoured the idea of spending on himself. He's selfish. He's not been considering us or his children in general. He's been considering himself. This is their assessment of their father. And it's not like they were looking to start up drama here or such. Jacob sprung this question upon them, and this is their first response. This is how they feel about Laban. And with that, we see it's not a good legacy to leave for your children. If your children are like, look, he's not providing for us now. We don't have an inheritance in the future. He's treated us like foreigners. He sold us like slaves, and he took all our money. That's obviously showing now Rachel and Leah are very agreeable to leaving. And then verse 16, this is how they respond to Jacob saying, look, God took the livestock of our father and gave them to us. Verse 16, for all the riches that God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So they said, look, it wasn't our father that gave us all this wealth. It was God. He took it from our father. And so, therefore, if God told you to leave and go back to your family, both of his wives are in agreement to leave and go back. Any comments here?
It is, thinking of Laban's sons, how they didn't see God's hand in any of it. And here the two daughters do. And so, again, just the blessing that God now is working not only in Jacob's heart, but through Jacob, that now his wives seem to recognize God's hand in these things. I thought that was just, it struck me as a great contrast.
Absolutely. And that was a very good point to make, Pastor, that God has worked in Rachel and Leah's hearts. So Laban's sons don't see the working of God at all. They think Jacob's being dishonest and stealing. But Laban's daughters, Rachel and Leah, immediately see that this is what God has done. Basically, our father chose not to provide for us, but God did. And therefore, they both make the decision that they're in agreement with Jacob following God. Whatsoever he has said unto thee, do. We will finish with verses 17 through 21. We will not do the last part with Laban catching up to Jacob. We'll finish that, Lord willing, next week. But do I have a volunteer to read verses 17 through 21? Go ahead, Rick.
Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels. And he carried away all his cattle, and all his goods which he had gotten, cattle of his giving, which he had gotten and paid in Aram, for to go to Isaac to his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, and that he told him not that he fled. But he fled with all that he had, and he rose up, passed over the river, and set his face toward Mount Gilead.
So we have verse 17. Jacob has enough camels for his entire family. Remember, camels are expensive. They're very much a display of wealth. They're also very important for long, hot desert journeys. If he had left 6 years earlier, he would have had no camels from what we know. Now God's blessed him a lot. He has enough camels to make this a much easier journey for his family. And so he takes his whole family. They have camels to ride on. He takes all his cattle, the entire flock, which Laban wouldn't immediately notice this since they're about 60 miles apart. And he took all his goods, all the stuff that he had, tents, all the stuff that was related to that, all his possessions. He took all of them going back to Canaan. And so what happened? Laban went to shear his sheep, which means Laban's actually at his flock now. Instead of Laban being distant from his flock, he's actually at his flock. There's a 60-mile, roughly 3-day journey between Jacob's flock and Laban's flock. So Laban learns 2 days later, basically because it takes 2 days for the news to get that, oh, Jacob just took his whole flock and left. Because assuming Laban's here to shear his sheep, he sees Jacob not here, and he's like, oh, Jacob's on vacation right now. Implication is very strong. Jacob has plenty of servants and such. He left some of them to take care of Laban's flock while he's off talking to his wives about leaving and going back to Canaan. So Laban's here with his flock and doesn't see Jacob. Takes a couple days for the news to get to him. But Jacob is left. He fled with all that he had and rose up and passed over the river. The river is one of the tributaries of the Euphrates. I forget the exact name of it. It's not important. He's going south, back through Syria. He's going south all the way down to Israel. And so it crosses this small river, heading towards Mount Gilead. Mount Gilead is the second part of modern Israel you get to if you're going from Syria. First part is the Golan Heights. Second part is Mount Gilead. So he's basically just entered northern Israel. That's the direction he's taking. All of the mountains of that part of Israel you can see from a very long distance away, because a lot of the rest of the ground is flat. That's part of why there's also so much battle over the Golan Heights, because they overlook 3 countries. But all that to say, so he is going south, set his face toward the Mount Gilead. He can see it, but he's not there yet. And that's where we're leaving off for this week. Any questions or comments on this week? This is very much God's provision and his faithfulness to his promise, taking Jacob back at exactly the right time. And we will see in the rest of this chapter, protecting Jacob from Laban. So let's close in prayer. Dear Lord God, I thank you for the faithfulness you display in each one of our lives. We thank you for this testimony of the faithfulness you displayed in the life of Jacob and in the lives of his wives. And we thank you for the certainty we have that you see everything that happens to us upon the earth, and the certainty we have that you are in control, both to judge and to reward. In Jesus' name, amen.